So in this video, I am going to tell you a little bit about a hatchet handle that I made. Uh, you'll notice that the title of the video is how I made a hatchet handle and not how to make a hatchet handle, because it's my first and only hatchet handle that I've ever made. Um, so keep that in mind as you're watching the video, that there's some things that you may not want to do the same as how I've done them. Now, when I originally made this handle, I wasn't even considering making a video of it at that time, so all I did was take some pictures at different steps through the process. Um, so this video is going to be made up of those pictures and then me narrating about those pictures as we go through the process. So this first picture here is fairly early in the process. Unfortunately, it's not right at the beginning, before I made any cuts on it, but it's fairly early on. The piece of wood I used was actually right out of the firewood pile. It's a piece of oak that I went out and found a piece that was fairly straight grained and no knots. It was about the size that I wanted it. It was a little longer, a little wider, but it looked like a pretty decent piece of wood. That's what I based it off from. It looked good. So as you can tell, as of right now, there's nothing too scientific about the way that I made this. It's just how I decided to do it. I based my design off from a hatchet that I already had, a hatchet handle. That's kind of what I base the lines off from. You can see pencil marks on here of where I marked it. And then after I marked it, I just used that same hatchet to knock out chunks of wood off from this piece of firewood where I didn't want it, and just made a really rough cut to kind of rough it out to how I want it to look. The next picture you'll see here, you can tell it's a little bit smoother. It's not quite as rough anymore. At this point, I had been using a draw knife to smooth things out a little bit more and make a little bit more precise cuts on it. You can kind of see the shape of the handle coming in that direction. Then this next picture, you can see it's even more defined, more smooth. At this point, I've been using a spoke shave to take even smaller pieces off, get it even smoother, really starting to get it closer to how I want it to be at the end. Then this next picture, I have marked with a pencil how far I want the head to come down. You can see a light pencil mark on there. Handle's also very dirty from me holding it a lot, but that will sand out later. In fact, I might have already sanded it a bit at this point. And you can also see that I have been carving down the area where the hatchet head will sit on there, getting that ready to go on. Now in the next picture, I've gotten it worked down far enough that the hatchet head will sit on there. However, you'll notice it's got a bit of a round, I don't know what the technical term is, but I'll just call it a cheek that comes down a little bit farther, and you can see where the arrow is pointing to right there. And so the next step is to cut out a little bit of the handle so that cheek will fit down flush into the handle, and you can see that on this next picture right here. And for that I used a little 1/4 inch chisel to just slowly eat away at that so that that cheek will fit down real nice down into the handle there. Okay, the next picture here is where I took the piece of wood from. You can see these other two pieces, a long one and then the shorter one above it. That is the original piece of firewood that I cut this handle out of. I first, when I was taking it out, I just split off that outer section there, the long one, and then figured out how long I wanted it and just cut off that other. So I thought that was sort of a cool picture to set it back in there and see what all I've taken off. Okay, the next picture, I've gotten it sanded down. I've got it the way I want it. I've gotten all the dirt sanded off from it from my hands, and at this point it is ready to have boiled linseed oil put on it to finish the handle off and give it a seal coat on it to kind of protect against water and dirt and help keep that out. So the next picture here, you can see I have started applying some linseed oil to it, boiled linseed oil, and the first coat or two that I put on, I mixed it about 1 part boiled linseed oil with 2 parts of turpentine, and that thins out the linseed oil and allows it to soak into the wood better right at the get-go, so it really soaks way down into the wood and completely fills it up. And so this is fairly early on. Then the next, probably the second coat that I would have put on would have been about a 50-50 mix. Third coat, maybe 2 parts linseed oil to 1 part turpentine, and then after that it was just all straight boiled linseed oil, rubbing it on. And to do that, you just rub it in, keep on rubbing it until, add more until it doesn't soak in anymore. Let it set for maybe 10 minutes or so, and then come back and wipe off all the excess, and then just let it set for a while. Let it really soak in, and then just keep on repeating the process all the way through the different strengths of linseed oil. This next picture, you can see that I have gotten the hatchet head, all the nicks smoothed out of that. I should have pointed out in the previous picture that there's a whole bunch of gouges in the hatchet head. It was in really rough shape on the blade, and what I used for this was I actually used a belt sander because it was so bad. Now, I was very careful not to overheat the blade. I had a bucket of water right next to the belt sander, and then I would briefly rub it on the belt sander, take it down a little bit, stick it in the water, cool it off, do the other side, and just kept on doing that until I had all the nicks sanded out of the cutting edge. Next picture here, you can see that the handle is getting a bit of a richer color to it. I've gotten more coats of the oil in it. The blade's done. At this point, all I need to do is cut the kerf, which is where your wedge goes into in your hatchet head, and that spreads the wood apart. The wedge spreads the wood apart and then holds the hatchet head onto your handle. The next picture, that's everything that was left over, all the wood shavings there, not very interesting. And this picture here is all of the tools that I used. You got the mallet there. I used the mallet with the 1/4-inch chisel for cutting out around the cheek. Carpenter's pencil, obviously, that's self-explanatory. The clamps I used to hold it onto the sawhorse. The sawhorse isn't pictured here, but used it to hold the handle on the sawhorse while I was using the draw knife and spoke shave, keep it in place. Saw, use that once to cut it to length. Spoke shave I used later on in the process, kind of fine-tuning it, getting it shaped down the way I wanted it. The hatchet, I used the handle as a template early on, and then the hatchet itself to knock out big chunks right at the beginning. Draw knife was kind of intermediate stage there, roughing it out a little bit more, and you got to have a whetstone there too, of course. You know, wouldn't be complete with a hatchet without the whetstone and then sandpaper. So that's about it for the process. Okay, so I'm going to end once again on the finished product here. And personally, I think it came out pretty well. There's a couple things I would have done differently. I stopped a little too early right in this area. I should have rounded it out just a little bit more. It's a little too square here, but it still fits pretty good in the hand. It feels pretty decent. Another thing to note is this particular hatchet head is I believe it's a Stanley Handyman. So you know, you've got your hatchet, a little nail puller right here, and then your hammer on the back. So when I was making this, I kind of envisioned it being sort of a camp axe or camp hatchet. You could have your blade for splitting kindling or whatever, hammer putting in tent stakes, whatever you need it. So what I did is I put on a fairly short handle. Now here's the other hatchet that you saw earlier in the pictures. You can see that this handle is probably 3 or 4 inches shorter than a regular hatchet handle is. And that's just so that it's real packable, it's a little bit lighter. And I kind of like that feature. I mean, I've already got a couple other full-size hatchets, so I figured I'd do something a little different with this one. And one other thing is that in the top here, you can kind of see a color difference where that wedge is in there. However, as it dried out, I got a little bit of a gap on kind of each end of the head inside here. So if I were to, I haven't really used it a whole lot yet, but if I were to really use it seriously, I would have to get probably a small metal wedge and put it in this way across there to expand it out and really set that head onto the handle. Other than that, I'm pretty happy with it. But like I said, I mean, this is my first one. It's the only one I've done. So that's how mine turned out. And I assume that if you're watching this video that you might be also thinking about making one. So maybe this will help you know what to do or what not to do. And so I hope this helps, and thanks for watching.